So we're ready to start this exciting webinar about e-commerce in Canada, and I will speak English also because we have English-speaking guests. First of all, Professor Jan Klakurka from Rotman University, and our main speaker, Nadira, from the course that Jan teaches, and I am the Italian Trade Commissioner in Canada, Marco Saladini. So we have done preparations about this webinar, invited as many companies that belong to this the sectors that are covered as possible, and we are happy to announce that we had over 250 registrations. So that's why I was saying also that it's exciting, but exciting will also be the content and the information that we will share. We will cover an overview of the market, how to sell via e-commerce, step by step, the logistics of it, the main rules about electronic e-commerce, electronic commerce, the main platforms and success stories. I want to wholeheartedly thank not only the team that did this beautiful study and presentation as part of their course at the Rotman University, but I let Nadira introduce the team because she knows also how to pronounce the names and everything, so I don't want to get it wrong. But I will also thank the Canadian Italian Business Professional Association that has made introduction with the Rotman team. And you know, we're members of this association, and that's how we got in touch, and we managed also to work with Rotman. So thanks CIBPA and John Lettieri for introducing. And I think I will stop here. But last thing I want to say is that if any of the companies, Italian companies following us, are interested in going into more detail about these things, the main point of contact is the Italian Trade Agency, a governmental agency, of course, offices in Canada, in Toronto and Montreal. You can just write to toronto@ice or ice.it. Thanks, and the floor goes to Jan, I guess.
Well, sure. Thank you very much, Marco. My name is Jan Klakurka, and yeah, I've taught the management consulting course and many strategy courses at the Rotman School of Management for many years. And we've been doing a project, something called the Real Life Consulting Project, of which the output Nadira, in her case, in her team's case, is going to discuss with you this morning. And it's a very exciting experiential opportunity for students. So young people in their fourth year of undergraduate business studies at University of Toronto, they're able to have opportunities to meet folks like Marco, like Ziba, and others at the Italian Trade Commission, other CETA clients, John Lettieri from Hero, and many other billion-dollar companies, not-for-profits, and everything in between. And it's been very successful. We've done over 135 of these projects, and I've brought it to Huron University and expanded it into a governance program as well. So it's a very successful model. I just wanted to say, again, thank you very much. Grazie to Marco, to Ziba, and others, everyone listening this morning. I know it's important. It's a busy time of the year for everyone, and as we complete activities before summer. So thanks for taking the time. Nadira and team, thank you very much. The course ended at technically December 20th. So to have a student engage with an organization in this capacity really shows Nadira's commitment. So thank you, Nadira. Thank you, team. It also shows Marco and Ziba the interest that you, as the pro bono client, have been very interested and found this material important. So I'll stop talking. I can hand the floor. I guess I'll hand the floor back to Marco, and otherwise to Nadira as you may see fit. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks for following up with this and taking, supervising the work and inspiring everyone to do it nicely as they did. Now, I also forgot, but that's unforgivable, to thank the staff here, of course, Ziba, Madian, and the initially Piero Titone, who then left the office, but the colleagues that are taking care of food and is not wine, but those three sectors actually: fashion, cosmetics, and food and beverages that are at the core of this research. So thanks all, and I think now, Nadira, the floor is yours. Yes, Nadira, can you hear me?
Hi. All right, everybody hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you.
All right. Good morning, everyone. All right. Sounds good. So good morning, everyone. I'm really excited to be here and go over the presentation. I just want to note that this presentation was also created by two of my other class members, Haya and Nicole, and under the supervision of Professor Jan. We're very fortunate to have worked with the ITA in our fall semester, and I will get started. I'm just going to start by sharing my screen.
Yeah.
All right.
I think it's ready. So
your invitation to start. So let's go. Thank you.
All right. Sorry about the technical difficulties. It seems to be up now. So I'll just start with a quick overview of what I'll be talking about today. So first we'll talk about the e-commerce market in Canada, and then we'll go through a guide of how to purchase and sell in the Canadian market and shipping and all the legal requirements. And then we'll end with some consumer profiles as well as some success stories of companies that have already imported their products to Canada. So if we could go to the next slide. So here's a quick summary of what the Italian Trade Agency does. So they provide information and assisting as well as consulting and training to small and medium-sized businesses in Italy on how to import good here. And Italy is a key exporter of food and fashion in Canada. And the e-commerce market we've seen in the last couple of years to have grown slowly but steady, as well as because of the rise of consuming products online due to COVID and other things that have driven up the demand. We've seen a lot of potential in this market, and it's something that investors as well as companies should consider. And yeah, if we could go to the next slide. So now I'm going to be providing a quick analysis of the market in Canada. So Canada is the 9th market for e-commerce, and they have revenue over $31 billion. And like I've talked about the increase in the market, we've seen a worldwide growth rate increase in 2020. So that's why it's really profitable to expand into this market, as well as to consider it as an opportunity in the next upcoming years. Sections that have been really popular include the media as well as the fashion industry. So the following will provide a guide on how to import goods to Canada. So the first step is to define a target audience and expectations. This is probably the most important step, as any successful business has to understand their consumers. So this will involve an overview and asking who's the target audience, what do they buy, really how are you going to meet the demand from the consumer to the product. So what exactly are you offering? And this is a really good opportunity to set goals and objectives, whether the goals includes a quantitative amount of sale targets or expanding your reach, as well as targeting different consumers in terms of area or even like sections. So once this is determined, then we can move forward. At this point, you can also analyze different trends in the industry as well as competitors. Like I mentioned, for example, COVID-19, because of the pandemic, a lot of people were ordering online and it made it very convenient. And this is a trend that's been known to continue even post-pandemic, and that's something that companies can leverage on or as well change their model to fit. The second step after defining audience expectations is to choose a web developer versus do-it-yourself options. So there's many different options in terms of what you would like to do, but it really depends on many things, such as if you have a limited budget, then it would be recommended to choose a web developer that's already there, such as Shopify or Canada Cart. And with these websites, there's a very detailed analysis of when you complete your strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats, because everything is tracked, and you can choose a model that works best for you and based off of your products. But it should also consider how you are marketing your products at this stage, because this can help you determine whether you should spend more money in terms of the web development or in terms of getting the products to consumers through like advertising or other means. Also, you should look at the costs, if there's upfront costs and ongoing costs. So these websites will have like an ongoing cost, often like either a monthly or annual fee, and this should be taken into consideration. So the next step, the third step after you're done your website, as well as understanding your consumers, is selling online using this website. So how do you want to do the payment options as well as the shopping cart? So depends on the system you would like to use. There's many like different costs associated, for example, like the transaction fees, setup fees, monthly fees, as well as privacy of the data and fraud protection. So at this stage, it would be recommended to potentially set up a meeting with a consultant, and then you can discuss what is the best means and course of action to take with your product. It can also depend on the type of product, whether, for example, if you have more of a retail clothing, then versus something that would need different storage costs, such as something that is like edible. The next step with the payment process options is just really depends on how you want to take it from there. If you want to use third-party payment processing, such as different credit cards, Canada One is a very useful tool to useful third-party credit card processing, such as PayPal or PSI Gate, and all of these are good options to use. If we go to the next slide, and then so once you do this, following this step would be choosing to sell products through a website. So on this slide, we can see how you can minimize privacy and security risks. It's really important that customers feel safe when they're purchasing your products. So one recommendation would be not to have credit card information stored on the system, just in case there is any sort of fraud or hacking that occurs. Then this is one way to kind of avoid that information being leaked. Another thing should be a privacy policy. This will provide customers with some protections or what they can do if any information is violated, and this will also provide them with an additional sense of security to purchase from you. As customers may be hesitant to try out a new site, having security as well as privacy means will provide that sense of safety as well as verification for customers. Also, from the other point of view, be very suspicious of any sort of like large orders or unusual requests, such as like multiple copies of the same products or extremely fast delivery. Anything that looks remotely suspicious, so just take into consideration. And then going through the fourth step, this was how to sell through a website. So this would you determine like based off of the customer needs and preferences, and you can look at expensive options, or if you just want to start off, you can start with a cheaper package and then as well as upgrade over time. And then for step 5, this is really making your website and design very appealing to the customers. So this can be done by using different software packages or e-commerce plans. The design, the security features, as mentioned, it's so important for customers to feel safe. The shopping cart Ensuring that you have a smooth transition from the shopping cart, as well as like selecting products, will make it an easier transition for the customers, and it can help increase the level of sales versus something called shopping cart abandonment, which is when like a customer will leave things at the shopping cart, and this could be because the process of paying as well as into the end result was too long, and this can, so having a clear website as well as shopping cart can avoid any sort of like disappointment for the customer and make it very efficient. One other thing to consider is the level of support. So oftentimes some products need to be considered and tailored to the customer's needs. So what level of support does the website offer? Some businesses have chat boxes or emails that the customer can reach, but often having like a 24/7 chat box can be helpful, or having at least those common questions like answered, such as like shipping time of the product, if they want to change the design or the style. But then again, it really depends on the business and the products that are offering. If we can go to the next slide. Yeah, so this is mentioned above, so minimizing the shopping cart abandonment. So there's a couple of tips and tricks to use that can avoid this. So the first thing is making sure the visitors know that they're in a secure checkout process, and this can be done through the screen, as well as knowing that there's clear instructions to how to add to cart as well as to purchase. A very useful tip can be to provide a warranty or guarantees for the product. Oftentimes, if a customer is buying from a new site, they want to make sure that they'll be able to get their product in the quality and quantity that they had asked for. So to ensure that happens, and if it doesn't, then they have the warranty or the option to return, to make sure that it is a seamless process for them. If we can go to the next slide. So there's many different types of e-commerce software products. And like we talked about the payment examples, such as PayPal, oftentimes this will be very helpful for the consumer because they'll feel a lot more safer. PayPal is very popular and a lot of companies use it because it provides that security for customers when making the payment, and they're not worried about any sort of credit card fraud in that sense. Another payment example is Beanstream, or as well as Level 10, and these are all all payment methods that other companies have used, and each one can be looked into. The cost of each one can be taken into consideration before making a decision in terms of which one you would like to implement. So how do you ship in Canada? Well, Canada has different legal requirements. So the first thing would be to choose an e-commerce shipping solution. So there's many factors that are going to affect the cost, such as the package size and weight. So typically the heavier the package, the more it will cost, and where the destination of the package is going to. So whether it's going to a warehouse or a factory, or if it's going straight to the consumer. Due to many remote areas in Canada, distance can be very expensive, so it may be advisable to either partner with another company and you can ship together, as this will decrease the costs. It's also important to look at the international shipping fee from Italy, and it is advisable to use established companies such as UPS or FedEx, as this will help make the process more efficient. Also, with fuel costs, this price can fluctuate throughout the year, and this should be also taken into consideration. So on the screen, you can see some popular shipping companies in Canada, such as Canada Post and FedEx, and these are all options that can be used. The price of each one can be analyzed, and then you can see which one works best for the business, as well as you can look at the timing in terms of how to get the customers to products. Oftentimes, customers can pay extra to speed up the process if they want the package in a shorter amount of time. So once the product comes to Canada, there's duty and taxes on imported goods. And depending on the province of where the goods are coming from, the sales tax and legal requirements will vary. So you can see on the screen the provinces that will require GST and PSD and the ones that require HST. And so any mailed item to Canada will be may be subject to the good and service tax unless it is exempted. So you can see depending on the province, and if you're shipping to multiple provinces, then this should also be taken into consideration. So there's 3 key sectors that my team and I had looked at when creating this presentation. So the first one was processed food, the second one was cosmetics, and the last one was clothing and footwear. So when dealing with food, there's a lot more requirements, and it is mandated through the government, and there's different acts that are required. So, and this is in each process from the manufacturing to the delivery. So you must ensure that certain sanitary conditions are met. The seller must be familiar with any applicable requirements in order to maintain the standards and the quality as well as the labeling. So consumers must be informed of what's in the product exactly and the different health requirements. In certain cases, the foods imported may be subjected to other regulations, and this is through different acts. So when importing food, there's a lot more that needs to be taken into consideration, especially the licensing, depending on the type of food or beverage imported. So ensure that each food that's imported has been prepared under the conditions. And you should keep a record of where it's sourced from as well as where it's going to. So essentially the whole process needs to be tracked. For the cosmetics, under the Food and Drugs Act, cosmetics can be defined as any substance or mixture of substances manufactured, sold, or represented for use in cleansing, improving, or altering complexion, skin, hair, teeth, and this includes deodorants and perfumes. So under this act, the cosmetics must be preserved, packaged, and stored under sanitary conditions. So this goes back to when we talked about how the goods will be imported here. Well, where will they be stored to ensure their preserved condition until it reaches the consumer's house? Consumers also must be notified of any sort of list of the product's ingredients, and Health Canada must be notified if they're selling a particular product. There's a Consumer Packaging and Labeling Act that must be followed. And for clothing and footwear, all garments that are imported in Canada have specific labeling requirements, and it can depend on the type of texture, such as whether if it's a fabric or yarn. They might be part of the certain free trade agreements, and this can impact the tariff rate, so as long as they meet the rules of the FTA. And all garments sold in Canada must have the following information on their label. So it's listed under the bullet points, but it must be in English and both French, and this is because Canada is a bilingual country. So that must be taken into consideration maybe in the manufacturing stage when the labels are printed. If we can go to the next slide. So the most important part of getting returns is how to deal with the logistics of getting the products back. So as we mentioned before, it might be helpful to have a warranty or a return policy just to ensure that consumers they're not happy with the product, and there's a way to either take it back or exchange it. So this will help not only build that customer loyalty when they want to shop again, but as well as if it kind of avoids if they're unhappy, then they do have an option. So if you do plan on providing returns, you have to let the customer post the item back and wait for their package to return. So a helpful way of doing this would be to maybe in the initial shipping requirements, you can also partner with different companies to see if they will take the products back, but customers should know what to do in terms of providing that product back, as well as it would be helpful to have different chat lines or numbers that customers can call in order to get the procedures. There are some challenges with shipping. So for example, if you do not have a business number, so paying business taxes in Canada requires a Canadian business number, which is also known as a tax ID number. If not having this business number can create a bit of a barrier when trying to ship things back. Also, if there's any insufficient import permits, this can create a barrier as well. Other challenges will include any sort of prohibited items, as well as insufficient tax tracking software. So when shipping products are internationally tax-free are variable, and they can change according to the province's country. As we looked in the previous slides, we saw that depending on the products, the tax can change. Because there's both the government as well as the provincial tax. If we can go to the next slide. Lastly would be the shipping labels. As talked about, that there's different requirements of what has to be on the label. In the clothing labels, it has to be both in French and English. So this can also be a challenge to ensure that the label has the full and accurate information, as well as having any sort of information on the proof of delivery, the bill of landing, and all of this must be looked into. So one thing to consider is to ensure that the product is allowed to be in Canada for importing purposes. So each product will be different. So for example, you can see on the screen, it talks about anything from animal fat to spices and teas. So for example, with spices, tea, and coffee, there's no restrictions versus if you look at the fish and seafood, there's certain things that are not permitted in Canada, and a permit may be required. So if that's a product that you've seen the demand for and you want to bring it in Canada, just make sure it fits with the guidelines, and if a permit needs to be obtained, then that's another route that you can consider. But it would be recommended to do an analysis to see if it'd be worth bringing on what the demand is for that particular product. So Canada's cosmetic ingredient for ingredients, there's some things that are prohibited and restricted. So in order for a cosmetic product to be sold in Canada, it must meet the requirements and expectations of the Food and Drug Act and the cosmetic regulations. So on the slide, it has section 16 of what the FDA requires. As long as these requirements are met with the ingredients, then they'll be allowed to import it. However, there are certain ingredients that are restricted, and thus when you are deciding to import those products, you just make sure that everything on the list is okay, or maybe it needs to be altered before entering the Canadian market. And on the next slide, it shows us the restrictions on clothing and footwear in Canada. Some goods require a permit or license to import, and this will be like very specific products such as animal skin or fur. They may be required. However, it was noted that clothing and footwear, it's easier to import versus food and cosmetics because there's less requirements as well as restrictions. So now moving on to personal importation. So if you're importing products for personal use, it means that it's only for the use of one person. So these shipping requirements are different versus if you are selling it as a business. So there's different types of health products that can be used for personal use, and if they are listed under this, then you can bring it to Canada, but it must be, there's different requirements. So the health product must be in the original packaging or have the original label that says clearly what the health product is and what it does contain. Now we'll move on to the Canadian-European Union agreement. So what is this agreement? It's a trade agreement, and it outlines different opportunities that you can use when importing from Europe. So there's different protections that is granted. So for the first time under this agreement, Canada agreed to grant protection for certain foreign geographical indicators. So they also agreed to establish 2 new tariff rate quotas. This agreement makes trading easier and more seamless between the different countries. So general guidelines for this agreement. So with this agreement, Italy can virtually export all of its products to Canada duty-free, which is beneficial for the important economic sectors such as apparel, the glass, stone, as well as agricultural products and wine. And when we look at the made in Italy and Italian geographical indicators, for the first time in North America, this agreement provides protection for food and agriculture products from Italy. And in fact, with this implementation, Canada also decided to expand the additional imports for wine to increase, as it was seen as a higher demand in the agriculture and food product industry, which means that more Italian food and beverages can now be imported. So what is the effect on small and medium businesses? So this agreement provides many different opportunities. It helps eliminate the additional tariffs that may have been a barrier and something that was potentially holding small and medium-sized businesses back. Trade barriers can have extreme effects on different companies. So removing these barriers make it very more seamless for these companies to decide to import. And now we'll be talking about exporting food to Canada with this agreement. So as Canada and Italy both have high standards for food safety and the consumer demand, the European health standards are applicable if you're trying to export goods from Canada. And this includes what's banned in Italy as well as in Canada. So for example, there is a ban on growth hormones as well as certain food additives for animals. So the agreement doesn't change anything to these standards. Rather, it tries to make the import and export easier, but it does fully respect both of the standards. And Canada does apply, for example, different expectations to their own products, such as their annual model for dairy product quotas, and this is still applicable under this agreement. And the agreement will reduce costs and improve the predictability of trade in animal and plant products. So when we're exporting cosmetics, clothes, as well as footwear in Canada, the agreement also provides an outline of the proper procedure for this. So I'll talk about the different the rule of origin, which is provided to and applies to perfume, water, lipstick, makeup, and certain products, and the value cannot exceed 20% of the transaction value or price of the product. So the rule of origin is easy to meet for a single item. However, it may not be applicable for greater quantities. So this ruling can be interpreted and can be looked at when you're analyzing the legal components of building your business in Canada. It may also be advisable to get legal help during this stage to ensure that you're meeting all the requirements. So how do you ensure that your products are able to sell as Canada as well as that you're protected? So the first thing is having manufacturer liability insurances. In Canada, it isn't required to have this. However, it is recommended, as if a claim is filed against a business and the product itself manufacturers found to be responsible, then this can be a huge cost, as well as there is reputational risks, and as well as the consumer can be potentially hurt depending on what the damage is. So it would be very recommended to purchase this insurance in order to protect your company and products. Now we'll be moving on to warehousing in Canada. So as mentioned before, certain products have different requirements in terms of what they can use in Canada. So for example, with the warehousing for food and beverages, they may need the additional requirements such as a freezer or fridge. I think the screen is not sharing. Just give me one moment. Yep, okay, so it's back on. So just going back to warehousing in Canada. So as mentioned, that different products have additional requirements in terms of the storage, and this is more applicable to food and beverages just because of the expectations as well as the guidelines for these products. So when we look at the custom bonded warehouses, this can be a good option to provide the company with the guidelines and general information, make it a smooth process for them to deliver their products over. If we move on to the next slide, we can see that there's different requirements for processed food storage. So for example, the temperature, the products that must be kept in a refrigerator and freezer temperature should be double checked. This involves using internal temperatures and different remotes. Frozen products also have to be checked carefully because you want to make sure it gets to the consumer in its right form, as well as any sort of canned foods. So these may have additional risks with it, as well as that's why it's important to have the proper storage from it and potentially invest in hiring a warehouse or using existing ones. As for cosmetics and storage, we talked about how the Food and Drug Act has a section on this, and it talks about what's allowed and what isn't allowed and how it should be stored. It's ensured that the product's able to get to the consumers in the same form as well as meets all the requirements. For clothing storage, flat storage is ideal because it will allow enough support, as well as it's important to keep folding to the minimum. And however, this flat storage does take up more space than other storage methods. So it may be necessary to reserve this for selected pieces, more like fragile items, such as like beaded dresses, and this will help to ensure that the product doesn't get damaged. So depending on the quantity of your products, you can opt for different types of storages. So for instance, if you have very fragile items, then you can have half of it be used in flat storage and the rest you can use other mechanisms to ensure the product of high quality. Now, there's different warehousing in Canada, as it would be very expensive to open up your own warehouse, that you can use one that's pre-existing. So on the screen, you can see 6 different types of warehouses. However, based off of your budget, you can choose one that best fits your needs. So for example, Canada West Warehousing has options for long-term and short-term storage. So this may be best if your products are both racked and need floor storage. If you need something with transportation services, then the Kiel warehousing and logistics may be more useful, right? It also depends if you're importing food versus you're importing clothing. As we saw, the requirements are very different, as there's so much more that needs to be taken into consideration, such as food, to ensure that consumers don't get any harm when they're consuming it, and it's brought in and brought to the consumer, the whole process, with the same condition and value. Also with these warehousing companies, it depends where how you're trying to get to the product, to the consumer, the location of it, whether it's going straight to their house or if it's going to a storefront. Now we can look at some e-commerce marketplaces. So how do you want to sell your product here? An amazing option is Amazon, and they offer 2 different types of selling plans. So there's an individual and professional. This allows Amazon to offer the seller a lot of flexibility and to sell one item or even thousands of items. So it really depends where you are in your business model. If you want to be on the safer side, it would be recommended to use something like Amazon, as it's well established. Consumers are comfortable paying through Amazon, and the advertising, you can pay extra through the site. However, you're going to have to either through the individual plan pay per sale, or if you want to use the professional plan, then you can pay per month. So it really just depends on the volume of sales that you are having. So for example, if you're selling less than 30 items a month, then the individual plan would be useful. You don't need advanced selling tools and you're still kind of debating what to sell, then this is a safer option. But if you're at a point where you're selling over 30 items a month and you want access to selling reports, or you want to have specific programs such as Launchpad or Handmade, then a professional plan should be used. So how do you decide to start selling? Well, first, pick a product. So Amazon has more than 18 product categories to sell, and at least 10 or more are available to professional sellers only. Once you choose that, you can choose the selling plan. So this is either the individual or professional plan. And then after, you can sell the products. And Amazon is very useful with when notifying the seller and a customer when an order is placed, and they help ship the order to the address provided. And this lets Amazon take care of the shipping and customer service. This can be a huge advantage in your business, as you can focus on other areas. And Amazon will deposit payments into your bank accounts at regular intervals and notify you when the payment has been set. So just depending on where you are at in your business, then you can choose to see if it's better to go through Amazon, as well as if you feel like you're just starting out and you want to try the individual plan, then this is a viable opportunity. There's other common marketplaces in Canada. While Amazon is a prime and well-known one, there's other options that you can also use, such as eBay. And the process for this is very simple as well. You sign up, create an account, and you list the product. And you tell eBay what products that's being sold in the sell your item form, and and generally the recommendation for business sellers is to choose to list in the fixed price format unless the value of the item is unclear, as it can be the case with any sort of damaged inventory. And once you're signed up and you're listed and it gets sold, then you will get paid. Etsy is becoming a very common platform. There's no additional monthly fees. However, there are fees for offsite ads, transaction fees, payment processing fees, and you may have to do a little more work in order to advertise your product. If you have an Instagram page or any sort of other social media platform, then you can link the website straight from the page. And if you're receiving a high volume of customers and consumers on there, then that would be a great way to advertise. Lastly, you can even sell through Walmart Canada, and this will provide a unique advantage, and you'll be partnering with the world's largest innovative channel retailer. And the process for this is also very similar. Once you do an application, have a contract, register, and you'll be onboarded. So let's see consumer profiles. How are you going to determine who you're selling to? Well, first you got to see what your product is and who your target audience. It's stressed a lot that the person and consumers that you're selling to really are fundamental for the business. So you want to make sure that your target audience, you're able to cater to them, and you're selling products that they're going to use and purchase. So depending on the generational profile, for example, whether they're Gen Z or they're a millennial, then the type of advertising can be different. For example, Gen Zs prefer watching a variety of brief content versus having long advertisements. And generally, their wallet-friendly initiatives such as coupons will work really well with their generation, which is millennials. They prefer using web devices in nearly every aspect, even while shopping in stores. So they prefer the organic engagement versus like pushy or targeted. So just having that into consideration can really help structure your advertising plan. And then you can choose marketing platforms. So once you establish who your target audience is, you can decide whether you want to use social media marketing, and this will be like Instagram, Facebook, even potentially LinkedIn if you want to co-brand or use paid media. This might be an easier option, as you'll have additional help doing this. And essentially a company buys or sponsors a link that will appear, and when this keyword appears, the product or website will show, and this will just make it easy access and provide greater awareness of the brand. So we've conducted a survey, and it just showed how prominent social media platforms are to users, especially when buying products. A lot of people that follow a business on social media have bought something from that business, or at least have that brand awareness. And most popular platforms among all the participants were Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. So we're going to conclude with some success stories. So popular companies that have done this is Italy, and they've seen success recently in October 2020. And they had to adapt with the market, as well as they saw success in their products, as well as different companies that have partnered with Walmart Canada, such as the one on the screen, and how they've seen success in their partnership in the spring of 2019. So they've tried using this method and they've seen it to work. So in conclusion, the market here in Canada is very prominent, and there's a lot of opportunity to bring in foreign goods and investments. However, the process is lengthy, but once all the legal requirements are taken care of, then it is very advisable to bring in different products. Thank you so much for listening, and I now open the floor to any questions.
Thanks, Nadira. Well done. Good job. And we thanks for walking us through the process. I think it was very comprehensive, and I'm sure we got some questions. First of all, well, some of them you answered already. Okay, so some people were asking what are the main platforms, and this has been highlighted in your presentation. What are the requirements to access and register, and what are the logistic companies that can help? And so all of this was really clearly explained in your presentation. So I wouldn't ask you that question, but if you want to add in your answer, then you have other ones. Let me see here. Okay, they say, what about import requirements regarding leather bags and small leather goods? And what are the duties and taxes? And of course, we can provide details later. We have the first and last name of the person, but if you have anything to send to this person, we will do so. But there are a lot of questions that ask about the recording of this webinar, which I'm very happy to hear, because it means that people were interested and what they were listening, appreciate it, and also about the slides. So let me say this in Italian to all our guests. Naturalmente avremo le slide disponibili per tutti i partecipanti e lo saranno nell'arco dei prossimi 2 o 3 giorni, perché il documento che per raccogliere slide verrà pubblicato nella nostra sezione pubblicazioni, quindi sarà necessario registrarsi gratuitamente per accedere. Okay, so these are some instructions for use to our audience in Italian for maximum clarity. And Nadira, if you want to add anything, I think one of the big questions that people have is, can we actually do this? You know, can we actually set up our sales department or our sales website so that it will work in Canada? And oh, okay, there was also one specific question: can I use my existing website to connect it to some of the platforms? I don't know if this is really possible, because each platform has its own requirements. But this is also an interesting question, because some people have invested already time and money in creating something on their own, and they want to see how they can make it compatible with existing mechanisms that are more famous and probably more used in Canada.
Yeah.
That's the questions that we got so far.
Yeah, I think they're all great questions. In terms of for the first part, with leather products, it would be more specifically, you'd have to go under the act, because it might be different even between the provinces, whether you're importing it in Ontario versus Quebec. And in terms of using an existing website, the only thing I would see is maybe the payment and how you're going to ship it to Canada. So if they can have maybe a different section on the website of how if they want to import both in for example Canada and the United States, then the payment would have to be when users are paying, are they paying in Canadian dollars, and how would that get transferred with the different payment options such as PayPal and stuff. So it could just be even just adding a section, and that can be talked to the person that made the website, or potentially investing in a new link for just the purchases in Canada.
So, I mean, basically, either you use your own website or you use the platform. I don't think, there is a way to basically your website inside a platform, because the platform has its own rules, its own mechanisms to work. So basically you have to rebuild your storefront inside the platform.
Yeah.
Using their options and mechanisms also for payment, which eventually will come to you, but it will be collected by the platform first.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, I think it's just analyzing like the type of website, because some companies, for example, like if you even order online here, you can order from a company in the UK, like for clothes or something, right? But then it's just a matter, so they have like different, so when you at checkout, it'll lead you to different options. So for example, because the goods coming to Canada here, then you can do that accordingly. So just, I think it would be having to either edit the existing storefront, or if you want to create a completely new division, then it would be like a new website. But also like you want to make sure that the company is able to like advertise to the Canadian market, because that would be a bit different.
Yeah. So everything is simpler if you use external services, but of course this can have an impact on your profits. Now, given the distance and the complexities, etc., I mean, our recommendation would be to also use like a dropship system where you would have like a minimal storage in a warehouse here, so the goods are already cleared. Because sometimes the consumer doesn't know exactly about all of these things like taxes, and so they get the surprise in the mail. Like they get a bill from the order agency saying you have to pay this much, and they were not thinking about this. So really, I mean, if one can clear the goods and put them in a place here, that's really much simpler for everyone. Of course it's an investment, because you have some capital that is immobilized waiting to be sold, goods that are waiting to be sold somewhere in Canada, of course. So that's a cost for you, but in the end, it should work better, in my opinion, personally. I don't know.
Yeah,
right.
for sure.
What is the news from the questions we have? We have to pass them around, so I don't know if there are any more. Marta and Ziba, do we have more questions? Please let me know. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up. Of course, there were some questions about who can we sell to. Okay, is our main job here, and we exist for that here at the Italian Trade Agency, to find new avenues to do business overseas. So of course, I mean, we will answer those questions directly, and with service proposal, trying to help companies to find counterparts, direct counterparts here. But today, the main focus was so B2B. Okay, today the main focus was B2C, so business to consumer. So we will not pursue those questions right now. I mean, it's a different type of job that we need to do on those. I mean, yeah. Okay, so there being no more questions, I think we can adjourn. Thanking again Nadira and colleagues, and Jan and John Lettieri and the team here, and also especially our listeners. Thank you very much from Toronto.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.